Hello and welcome back to Season 2 of Fertility Talks, the Therapy Fertility podcast. I'm your host, Ranae von Meding, and I'm so happy to be back hosting our second season of this podcast. Each week, I'll be sitting down with a different guest and chatting all things fertility. As always, it's our hope that through this series, through honest conversation and information, we can strip away some of the stigma that often comes hand in hand with infertility and fertility treatment in Ireland. This week, I'm so happy to be joined by Sarah Brown, who is a therapy fertility patient and who is going to be sharing with us her journey to becoming a single mammy by choice. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
That's your Instagram handle, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Single mammy by choice. So everyone go follow now and follow along the journey. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm 10 weeks pregnant now and quite sick, but having a break in the sickness day. So
today is a good day.
It's a better day.
Let's go back to the start. Where are you from?
I'm from Edinburgh.
Gorgeous accent. I love your accent.
Yeah, sorry, people might not be able to understand me. Sometimes I speak
we'll have to subtitle you.
But I have lived in Ireland for 10 years now. 2012 I moved over. So pretty much one of you, I suppose.
Okay, so did you grow up with siblings or were you an only child?
I'm an only child from quite a small family anyway, both sides of my parents. And they split up when I was about 12. So I'm an ultimate loner. And I moved over to Ireland with a boyfriend at the time.
Okay.
And then we broke up and I had already started to retrain in Irish law. So I thought I'll stay here and see that out. And then I just haven't left. And here I am.
And so you work as a lawyer?
I'm a lawyer, yeah, for my sons.
A barrister or a solicitor?
A solicitor.
Okay. I pretend I know what the difference is. I don't really, although I think I do. I think the solicitors do a lot of the paperwork and then the barristers do the arguing in court. Is that the opposite?
Everybody believes that, and then, the TV makes it look like that. And barristers, sorry, no offense if any barristers listen, but they march around with their cloaks on or whatever, and the wigs. Yeah, and they think they're the powerful ones who get to argue in court. Solicitors can also argue in court. And they do sometimes, but yeah, we do other areas of law that barristers won't. So all the kind of property work, yes, also paperwork, although they do some of it, is really down to solicitors. It's not as dull as it sounds though. But actually, I'd probably rather be arguing in court. So you might have a point.
So at what point did you start thinking about children in your life? Did you, when you were growing up, did you always see yourself as a parent or?
No, I didn't come from a particularly privileged background. In fact, I grew up in a part of Edinburgh that was, I think, a European black spot. So my parents my dad was the first in his family to get a university level education. I was one of the first in my mum's entire family. So my mum instilled that in me. And so from a very young age, and then early 20s, mid-20s, I was just education, and law takes so long, and particularly the route I done it. It was just education, get a career, climb up the career ladder, just keep going, because it was instilled in me from a very young age and the opposite of everything my family had seen. So that's what I done. And I had a partner at the time that I moved over with, and I thought of kids then because it is almost a natural occurrence when you're in any form of committed relationship. It seems like the next step. But then we broke up 7 years ago now, and it just kind of fell off my radar for a good part. And I think that's just a natural part of being single. It's almost, I don't know if it's that we're conditioned to think like that, or maybe it's an evolutionary biological thing that you don't feel the need when there isn't a partner around, you're not in a relationship. But it was not on my radar. I spent a lot of time progressing my career, traveling, enjoying myself, buying nice things. And then maybe the last 2 years, like every woman, I'd say in Ireland who's single, I've been having thump after thump on the dating market. It's a hard place out there. It really is a meat market. And then with every one of those that doesn't work, me anyway, I can't speak for everybody, but I started to get more and more slightly disappointed with each one, and they were becoming cumulative, and I was wondering why my response, this could be I'd be dating someone for 3 weeks and I'd be really upset when it went wrong, and it was disproportionate. And I think I came to realise it's because I had always wanted kids in some way, shape or form, and the more that wasn't working for me, the more I realised it was further and further, it was getting further and further away. And so then the realisation began to creep back in, like, how did I forget this? So within, I'd say like the last 18 months, 24 months, it'd been really playing on my mind. And I thought, oh, perhaps I'll freeze my eggs. But I'm a massive coward. I didn't want to go through medical procedures unnecessarily. And I thought, God, that seemed, for me anyway, quite invasive without going the next step. If I'm going to do that, why don't I just do the whole thing? But then obviously, freezing your eggs is quite a different thought to doing it entirely on your own. So then you have to have another leap. So I did over the course of, say, maybe a year. There wasn't like a definite turning point necessarily, but it was, the thoughts were creeping in and creeping in. And then, say last September, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go and do it on my own, scrap the egg freezing. I'll just go the whole hog and jump right in. And here we are.
So how did you find therapy?
I was partaking in my usual Saturday morning ritual, which was coffee, and at the time smoking. I don't smoke anymore, but it was like a favourite pastime of mine. And I was scrolling and I saw it. Obviously I'd probably been searching for things or whatever, and it became, like Facebook or Instagram.
I know, Google is always listening to you.
It is listening, definitely. And it popped up and I was like, oh, because it was a brand that was familiar to me. I thought it was interesting that they'd moved into a new area, and I had, in a professional capacity, some familiarity with the owners of therapy. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll give them a shot. Some of my friends were shocked because obviously therapy is known for laser hair and Botox. And my friend was like, I'm not sure you can get a baby when you're getting laser hair removal. And I was like, well, you can.
It's not the same clinic.
No, it was obviously separate companies in the same brand, but it's renowned for that. So Botox, laser, baby.
So at what point did you tell your family and your friends that you were going to be having an appointment and going and exploring this?
Right away. I'm an oversharer. Like I would tell the whole world everything I'm thinking. I need to be stopped sometimes, actually. So even when I was thinking about it, I told everybody. And not for any particular reason, because I don't really listen to anybody else, but I probably field my thoughts and then just go with it anyway. So I told, like, my immediate family, like I have some cousins that I would consider like sisters. I told them and I told my best friends. And then they got a blow-by-blow after every appointment and every
step
test.
of the way.
They knew everything,
Yeah. And did anyone have any reservations about you doing it by yourself, or was everyone just immediately on board?
Everybody was on board. I think the person I was most concerned, and this probably sounds offensive, is my dad, because I don't know, I sometimes think maybe men would have a different reaction, and he's in his 60s now, and I thought, maybe he might find it a bit odd, but he was absolutely delighted. And in hindsight, I wonder if that was a dad's dream for a daughter, because there's no man that they have to contend with, so he gets to be a granddad and there isn't a man who might hurt me or whatever. So everybody was absolutely delighted. I did expect even some maybe uncomfortable questions. Or sometimes you can get little passive aggressive remarks or something. Sure. I expected something and there was nothing. Everybody was like genuinely so delighted. I've never done something where people are so supportive, actually.
So how did you find the process of like the initial consultation and getting started?
It's so easy. Well, it's not for everybody, but I was very fortunate that it was, and therapy made it easy, genuinely. The first step was a nurse consultation with some bloods, which I don't enjoy, but it was relatively pain-free.
Did Michelle take your bloods?
Yes. I was actually, I remember it vividly because I was also going on a first date that night. Timing was a bit mad, obviously.
That's so funny. Did you tell your date?
He knows now.
Oh, so funny.
Yeah, I didn't actually, I'll come back to that, but I didn't tell him. And then I decided to date. He was lovely, really actually, probably one of the best dates I've had in the last 10 years. Really nice person. And we dated maybe 6 or 7 weeks or so. And then I was just so invested in doing this myself. I was like, I'm really not, and he's probably maybe at a different time, different place, I would have really liked him, but I was like, no, I've got a new focus just now, so I'm not going to do that.
This is just for me,
But when I told everybody on my Instagram account, he was one of my followers, and he was like, no way. I was like, yeah, I hope you don't look at the time in there, but it was exactly right in the middle.
The same day.
Yeah, that's why I said I wasn't into it, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny because if you're dating someone and they kind of say they're not feeling it anymore, give you the cold shoulder, you always presume it's something to do with you. But I was kind of looking back on that, being like, if only he knew it really was
genuinely
nothing.
wasn't him.
It was me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very easy. I had bloods taken. Fortunately, everything looked good. I hadn't had a consultation then, but I Googled every single number on the results and I knew they were okay. And then I had a scan and then a consultation, and we were ready to go after that. Like, I had no obvious issues, so I just had to then pick a sperm donor and get going.
So let's talk about picking the sperm donor. How did you find that as a process?
It's bizarre. It is bizarre. Like, it's kind of enjoyable. Now it's enjoyable. And if somebody else was doing it, I'd be like, have a little party, let me in. I want to have a look as well. But when I was choosing it did become a little bit overwhelming. It really, like, it's a cliche now, everybody says it, but it is like sperm Tinder. Because you get so much information. Like, you get some childhood photographs, biography, personality tests, medical history. And you're just kind of flicking through, seeing who's suitable. So at first, I had a lot of donors I thought would be great candidates. And then unfortunately, by the time I came to choose a donor, the pool had dropped significantly. So I was actually struggling to find one. So I think I was looking maybe 3 or 4 times a day. I would just go back on and
see if any new ones had come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I think everybody should do that, because I've heard that there's like been a surge in demand for sperm donors and they can't keep up with the demand, which is a funny thought.
Well, it's funny. I think a part of that is because some of the criteria around what type of donor you're allowed to choose has changed recently in Ireland. So that's probably why, there definitely are sperm donors, but possibly not as many as there has been in the past.
Yeah, and I heard as well that there is something that, I don't know if it's obviously one for sperm banks, but that they can sign more paperwork, and not just about being open, but then they become more available to Ireland. Yeah. I'm not sure the ins and outs of that, even though it's my job. But there wasn't that many, but it was refreshing 3 or 4 times a day, and the one I ultimately chose appeared at like 4:00 on a Wednesday, I think, or something. So I wasn't sure how he just appeared back. Maybe he was released back into the pool. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, so if someone chooses a donor, there's kind of like a hold put on them.
Yeah.
It's like it's a deposit. It's the pregnancy slot, because only a certain number of families can be created in Ireland from any one donor. Exactly. But if someone has tried to use that donor and pregnancy hasn't resulted, they can release them back into the wild.
Back into the pool, yeah.
Yeah.
The fish is back in. So and I snapped him up. So that was, it's not really a traumatic story. It just took me longer than I would have liked.
And at what point did you do your implications counselling?
Just after that. So, and it's so weird, you just remember dates. I found him on the 14th of December. Ordered that day, and then obviously it was Christmas break, so I had to try and get it as soon as possible after the Christmas break so I could go ahead with the IUI. So I done it on the 3rd of January. It was the first.
And how did you find that? Did you find that an interesting session?
Yeah, I've heard from other people who've done it that they have different experiences. I think depending on what your concerns or your questions are, but predominantly the role of the counsellor is just to make sure you understand the process, that you understand the law around it, and like your rights and what will be the rights of your child, and then any additional questions you have thereafter. And I had, like everything in my life, already researched it to death, so I didn't have many questions, but she did tell me things that I wasn't aware of, like whilst the law says you can't, or the child won't be able to make contact until at least 18, obviously with the advent of modern technology and DNA testing and like ancestry.com or whatever, people are finding each other accidentally. So for example, if I ever want to DNA test my child with their consent, obviously a bit earlier than that, you may find your donor's cousin, for example, and then it's quite easy to link up who they are. And then there are some groups online who share information about donors so that their children, so genetically siblings, can meet up. So I had just thought, okay, 0 and then 18 years will be the next step, but there's also...
But not necessarily.
No, you can find out much sooner.
Yeah, and did you have any other concerns around using a donor, or do you now that you're pregnant has like your, you know, how you feel shifted at all? Or
I don't know if I'd call them concerns. There was things I perhaps hadn't considered. I did have, I say it quite flippantly that, you know, I just went in September, October, done it in December, but through all the months of thinking, I'd had a look at things, and I was looking throughout, so I understood all like the implications legally anyway. But now, for example, a good one is the Facebook groups I was referring to, where you can make an account if you have a child, and log in, and you can search for your donor and see if that donor has is the biological father. That's a controversial term, whichever you want to use, of the child. So you can see perhaps siblings in the UK or Italy or the US. And having gone through this process, I thought a lot about like what the child's point of view would be and the child's rights. And I follow a few people online who are donor conceived people, and I had a look at like their content and some of the resources they were suggesting, and they all said, oh, it's so important for the child to know they were donor conceived, to know as soon as possible, and that if there are donor siblings, they probably would like to have them in a network in some shape or form, provided everybody gets on and there's no problems. So I had a look at the Facebook page, and I sat there thinking, oh, will I join if I'm not? Because I'm pregnant now, so technically I'm not breaking any rules. I can have a look. Yeah. And I was so torn, because I was thinking, okay, well, I've heard from donor conceived people that that's what they want to do, and so I probably should do that. But then I felt a bit of discomfort, because I actually don't know why. I can't say because, but I did. And I wonder if it's just because you wouldn't, on traditional ways of having families, it's probably quite a shock to find out that the biological father of your child had, I don't know, 16 other children, for example. So I looked at it and I was like, oh, will I do it? Will I not? And then I also didn't want to peer down the future and have a look at the kids of the donor, because then it could be a glimpse of what my child will look like or not. It just felt a bit too much to open that box just now, but I think I obviously will do it. Say maybe when the child's 2 or 3, I'll start having a look. Yeah. I've got plenty of time yet so far, but I think that's the first time I saw a bit of tension between what I would like and what the child's needs would be.
Might need, yeah. Yeah. And obviously I have 2 kids that are donor conceived, and I've felt a lot of these same things, and, you know, have been sitting with a bit of discomfort over certain things and certain terms and phrases. And I think that's the really important thing, is to recognize that what your feelings are as a parent have to kind of take a back seat when it comes to what the needs of the child are, and what their wants are and their wishes are in the years to come.
And it's still like such a new area. Like, even speaking as a lawyer, like the law that regulates it just now, whilst I think it was drafted in 2015, it wasn't really enacted until last year. So it's so new here. And then there's theory that like society makes law, or law shapes society. And even because it's so new, like the terms that are used, or which is correct, or which a child might like, or which like a parent might like, or the donor may like themselves, all of it's so new. So it's such a learning process as well. So I fully expect that in the years to come, I'm probably sitting here quite naive thinking, oh, I've just found one tension, I'm sure there'll be 40.
For sure.
The same way they're competing needs from any parent and their child, or any kind of family. But maybe these ones are just a bit less well tread. So will be new for everybody.
Okay, so in terms of the actual IUI and going through the medication, how did you find the meds?
I was quite lucky, because my numbers were quite good. Now, that's not the be all and end all. Like, I don't like saying that to people who are going through fertility treatment, because equally I know a lot of people who had what would be considered not great numbers of certain levels of certain hormones and have been successful. So don't panic about that, because everybody does. But I had quite high numbers, even for my age. So I thought everything would be okay, and it was. And because of that, I was given quite a low dose of medication. And it's less for IUI than it is IVF anyway. So they were fine. I can't really complain. Like, I wasn't on a lot of hormones. But having said that, and acknowledging that my road was a bit easier than other people's, I did still swell up like a balloon, and it's not really gone down since then. I think that's just my makeup. If I'm going to hold water, I'm going to hold it. I didn't really get any like any other discomfort other than right at the end you get like a trigger shot, and that made me, what I now know is very similar to me in pregnancy. Like I was really quite hormonal, I suppose, upset, tired, feeling sick, and I wish I'd known that was what was to come. But that was my only kind of negative experience. I was fine with the drugs, and the procedure itself was so simple. I actually was shocked that when I had to go in, I had to put on little boots and a gown and a cap, because to me it doesn't seem like a medical procedure. It's so comfortable in there, and it doesn't feel like you're in like a hospital or a clinic, that I almost got shocked when I saw that again. It's like, oh, it's still a procedure, you know. And it's really nice. It's you go into a room that's kind of dimly lit, and the embryologist passes sperm through for me, tells you how it's done, how many there are, which I was shocked that there's millions. I couldn't believe that. I was actually a bit like, I was joking, my donor's Danish, and I was like, the Danish invasion, there's millions, there's millions of them in there now. I was really shocked. And then it was fine. It was kind of like getting a smear test, because they use a very similar tools. And then 10 minutes, and I thought, well, I'll have to probably just sit there for like a little while. No, I was told I could get right up and go to the bathroom. Obviously I was petrified.
Oh my goodness, it's terrifying, isn't it? Like after having an IUI or a transfer, you're like, you don't want to go to the bathroom because you feel like you're going to pee it out, but it's like, that's not how anatomy works.
So I said though, I had a nurse and the doctor was there, Dr. Kennedy, and first of all, I told him it was very romantic, which I think he was
the dim lighting.
After the procedure was done, and I was like, that's the most romantic one I've had. And I think he was like out of the clinic at that point. But then when he said he could go to the toilet, I was like, no, but I can't.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's not the same as having sex. And I was like, are you sure? So even like, probably a bit too much information, but when I went to the bathroom, I was trying not to strain, like to let out very slowly. And then I did. You don't have to do this. Science says you don't have to do this. But I sat with my legs up all day. Yeah. And I was like, gravity can't hurt. So I'd done it like Phoebe from Friends, I suppose.
So after that was done, you went back to your normal life for couple of weeks. How long did you last until you tested?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not normal life. I was a crazy person. I was fine, I think, for 5 days. I was really proud of myself. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's a 2-week wait. Mine was technically 15 days. And they say then, that's when you can if you get a positive, it's a real positive. But I also had learned through all my Googling and research that you can test out the trigger. So the trigger injection you're given to make you ovulate mimics the human pregnancy hormone. So it'll pick it up in a pregnancy test. So I wanted to make sure that if I got a positive, it wasn't the trigger shot. So I started testing on day 6, which is obviously ridiculously early, after what I learned about conception and implantation. And there was a very faint positive, which was trigger. I've done it again on day 7. The trigger was gone then, which I also heard is quite fast. So I managed to hold back for another 2 days then, and then on day 9 I tested again. I got a positive, and then just for like sport or madness, I done it every day thereafter just to make sure.
And was it getting darker?
It was, but then I ran out of those tests, the ones where you can see it based on how dark the line is, and I had to move to clear blue.
And the clear blue is not as sensitive as well.
No, they do have an early one, but everybody seems to do the coloured, the first response ones. So clear blues, and I don't mean to defame any companies, but they say they also have an early detection test, which I used, and it came up positive. And then, like, I continued crazy person for the next few weeks before the scan.
How much money did you spend on pregnancy tests?
My mum said to me that I can't go back into the chemist because they're going to think there's something wrong with me. So for the last
Were you going to, like, different chemists?
I did it first, but then I look insane. The first chemist where I got all the kind of strip responses ran out of them. So I had to go to my local chemist. And then because I continued to so Clear Blue have ones that are like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 plus. I wanted one each week. So my mum was like, you can't go in there anymore. So I sent her in. She's
so funny.
Yeah, she's 60 this year and she's in there buying pregnancy tests. That's
hilarious.
Yeah. Don't know how much I spent, but it maybe ruined mine and my mother's reputation.
So then you did you believe that you were pregnant at that point? Because I know sometimes, you know, and I suppose this is why the clinics will advise not to do home pregnancy tests, because you can get a false positive or a false negative. And really the only reliable kind of way to definitely say you're pregnant is a blood test. Yeah. So you came back in for the blood test. When you came in that day, were you like, I'm definitely pregnant, or did you want that to confirm?
No, I knew I was definitely, because I'd taken 4 tests or something. So even if you might get one that was wrong, I didn't think 4 would be, and certainly not because I had tested out the trigger. So I knew, I mean, you don't get a positive unless you have HCG. That doesn't mean it's going to work every time. But it was there. So I went in the clinic, I was perfectly happy, and I told them I'd be seeing them for a scan and skipped back out. But despite that, I still, because you learn so much at every stage. So after you've got over I just want to be pregnant, I want the positive result, it then goes to I want a high HCG number, because it has to be a good one, because you know, if you've got a low one, there's a danger it's not a viable pregnancy. So I was still sitting there being like, give me the result, I want it to be a high one. So when I think I was told I'd get a call before, I don't know, say 3:30, something like that. 3:25, I hadn't had one. So I called therapy and I was like, please tell me. They came back to me, and then I was like, is that a good one? Like, what is the maximum you can see? Tell me, where am I? The poor nurse must have been like, just calm down, like, we'll see you for your scan. I went online and found everything I could find on numbers.
Yeah, never Google like what HCG numbers mean, because you'll be like, oh, it's twins, oh, it's this, it's that.
Well, I thought I was having twins for a while. Which is a whole other bag of concern. But yeah, no, I got the result and I was perfectly satisfied with it. But then, like every stage of this, and I've learned, and I'm sure this will go on until my child's 18, I was then like, okay, the next step. So it was the scan. Yeah, and I was like, oh, I can't relax until the scan's okay. And then it's like... So
when you came in for the scan, you brought your mom with you, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
How was that?
Well, she tells me in her day, as if I say that as if it was like the 1800s. I was born in 1986, and apparently you didn't get scans then. So you got
I remember you telling
X-ray.
Me this. This is crazy.
Yeah, apparently they just checked her pelvis, because I think then it used to be if you were shoe size 5 or above, they thought you could probably give birth without a C-section.
That is hilarious.
And she had an X-ray to check her pelvis, and that was it. She didn't have anything else. So when I said to her, there's an early scan, but like, Mum, you know, it won't look like a baby.
It looked like a bean.
Mine looked like a little bean with a rope holding on a ball. We've been laughing at the pictures ever since. But she was like, oh, are you sure I should come then? Is that really a scan, Sarah? Have you maybe made this up? Like I'm crazy. Yeah. And I was like, no, it's fine. Come along. Like, and I was kind of offended. I was like, why don't you want to see your grandchild? Like, you're all I have. You better come along. And then when we got in there, she started crying. So, like, obviously not what she expected. I didn't know. I was very kind of, is everything okay? Yeah. Very, like, methodical and factual about it. But it was lovely. It's surreal, I think, is the right word. Especially that early on, because you're so used to seeing pregnancy images and they all look like little babies. Whereas that age, it's a bean with a ball. But lovely, but surreal. Yeah,
it is bizarre seeing them that early on. And then have you been into your maternity hospital? Have you had another scan since?
My next scan is on next Tuesday. Because I was under the care of therapy. I think I was released at like 7.5 weeks. Yeah. So then I went to my GP, got some shocking news about my weight gain, and then had to go and book into the hospital. So that has to be done by paper. Okay. Took a little bit longer, but I booked in for a Harmony and IPT test next week. So not only will I get a scan, I'll get a blood which will tell me the sex, and I'm going to find out. So I'm very excited.
Okay, so how have you found the community of single parents by choice?
They're so supportive. I said this to a group of friends I have back in Scotland, that I'd never seen such a kind community. And I think now it started off online. There's a group who now meet in real life, if you like. But even for the wider online community, like whether it's on Instagram or forums or Facebook or whatever, and it goes beyond just like single parents. It goes to anybody going through fertility treatment or people battling infertility. They're all so kind. And I think it's because they'll recognise how hard it is and how emotional it is. And whilst I'm sure that's true for everybody who has a child, if you're doing assisted reproduction, there's the added the stresses you get with the scans, with the drugs, with the injections. There's just something that bit different as well. So it's so supportive because it's quite difficult. Yeah. But it's such a kind community.
Last question. What would you say to anyone who is really wanting to become a parent but is not in a relationship and is kind of hesitant about going it alone, so to speak?
I do, because I have in my little group of single mothers by choice, like the little SMBC in Dublin. There is a woman who's kind of just new to it and is just thinking about it, and a lot of her concerns are like the ones that everybody had, and I think maybe I had subconsciously, didn't focus on too much, but it's letting go of the idea that in order to have or to see kids in your life, you have to see a partner, whether that's like a same-sex partner or an opposite. It always seems to be focused around relationships. Like the last taboo, if you like, to me, is being single doing these things. Like even for adoption, I was shocked when I looked into it that single people can't adopt. You have to be in like a special category and get like an exemption. So it really is for me like the last taboo, and I think she felt like that, and it's just a process of letting that go. That's not true. You don't have to do these things. I probably never did, and you certainly don't have to do them anymore. Like I was raised by, my parents get on, and my dad was relatively close by, but still in a single mother household. And I think I turned out very well. So there's no reason to hold on to that. You have to have a partner to do it. And then when you let go of that, it's just absolutely exciting. Like I think it's empowering, and I think if you can change your view from fear to empowerment, then you just want to jump in, because it's how amazing that I can do everything on my own and I don't need anybody else. And then all you can see is the benefits of doing it on your own. Like I get to make every decision. There's nobody else I ever have to ask. Whichever way I want to go, it's all on me. And when you see it as empowering and brave rather than something you should be afraid of and a bit nervous of, it switched instantly for me. I'll probably take that back when I'm crying in 2 years' time because there's nobody around to help me. But to be honest, I don't know how much help I'd have from the men I dated anyway. So.
Fair. Well, thank you so much for coming in to chat. I know for a fact that you sharing your story both with us and online is just so helpful, because I think for people to see other people going through the same things, it just it's so comforting to know that you're not alone, and I know you have found that within the community. So thank you for being so open and transparent with your journey.
Thanks for having me.
And I hope the pregnancy goes really well and that the sickness goes away.
Oh, so do I. It needs to end, the sickness and the acid and the fatigue. I just want to be back to myself.
I promise you'll forget about it as soon as you have your baby.
After the childbirth, I'll forget about that.
Yeah, you will. It's just, it's the way biology works. Yeah. Something happens and the hormones just make you forget. So
I'll come back when the child's 5 and I'm complaining about something else. It's hard to do it on your own.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Fertility Talks, the Therapy Fertility podcast. If you have, please rate, review, and subscribe. For more information on the services we offer, you can visit www.therapyfertility.com.